what didn't Aaron and his sons do with the meat of the sin offering? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Leviticus on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Leviticus chapter 10. We're going to be reading from verses 16 to 20. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Leviticus chapter 10, beginning at verse 16. Then Moses made careful inquiry about the goat of the sin offering, and there it was, burned up. And he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, who were left, saying, Why have you not eaten the sin offering in a holy place, since it is most holy, and God has given it to you to bear the guilt of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Lord? See, its blood was not brought inside the holy place. Indeed, you should have eaten it in a holy place, as I commanded. And Aaron said to Moses, Look, this day they have offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, and such things have befallen me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been accepted in the sight of the Lord? So when Moses heard that, he was content. In this chapter, Aaron and his sons have been shown by God how solemn and important their job is and how they needed to do it right. Nadab and Abihu tried to offer strange fire before the Lord and were killed for doing something the Lord had not commanded. Aaron and his remaining two sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, were not allowed to go out of the tabernacle of meeting to bury their sons or brothers, nor were they allowed to mourn them. They were to continue on with their priestly duties that day. This must have been exceptionally hard for them, for the love they had for Nadab and Abihu would have been great. After that burial, Moses told them that when they were in the tabernacle attending to their duties, they weren't to drink of wine or strong drink. Like we said in the last episode, this ban doesn't mean that drinking alcohol as a beverage at other times was acceptable, for it did have lawful uses as a medicine. But even those lawful uses weren't allowed for the priests while working in the tabernacle. It is most likely near the end of the day now, and it could be said that Moses was inspecting the work of the priests in order to ensure that they were doing things properly. When Moses made inquiries about the goat of the sin offering, he found that it had been burned up. If you recall from chapter 4, there were 4 classes of sin offerings: that for the priests, the congregation, the rulers, and the common people. The blood of the animal for the sin sacrifice of the priests and the congregation was to be sprinkled before the veil in the tabernacle and on the horns of the altar of incense, with the rest being poured out at the base of the altar of burnt offering. The blood of the animal for the sin sacrifice of the rulers and common people were to be placed on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, with the rest being poured out at the base of that altar. What happened to the rest of the animal depended on what happened to the blood. If the blood went into the holy place in the tabernacle, the animal was to be burned outside the camp. However, if the blood simply was sprinkled on the altar of burnt offering, the flesh of the animal was to be eaten by the priests in the court of the tabernacle. From chapter 9, the sin sacrifice of the goat was for the congregation, and so under normal circumstances, the animal would have been burnt. However, in this case, the blood was only sprinkled on the altar of burnt offering, so it should have been eaten. This is why Moses was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar. They hadn't done what they were supposed to, for the entire process of this sacrifice was to provide the people of God the promise of atonement for their sin. If they didn't follow the instructions, the people wouldn't have this promise. Going along with that too, perhaps Moses was also worried that God would strike them down too, leaving Aaron as the only priest left. By correcting them now, while they were still new at this, not only will reinforce God's commands, but will also keep them from developing bad habits and taking shortcuts. They should have eaten the sacrifice. However, Aaron came to their defense. He told Moses that they had offered the sacrifices, the sin offerings, and the burnt offerings to the Lord, and look what had happened. Nadab and Abihu died at the hands of the Lord. This would have certainly caused them to be afraid. They also weren't allowed to mourn their deaths, which meant their minds might have not really been focusing on the moment like they should have. He is asking Moses, would the Lord have really accepted me eating the sin sacrifice in this condition? In other words, Aaron is saying that this wasn't an act of willful disobedience, but one motivated by fear and sorrow. Moses accepted that answer and moved on. Now, by any stretch of the imagination, this does not give us license to disobey the words of the Lord, for the flesh of that sacrifice should have been eaten. However, this story does show us a little bit about God's grace. There is a difference between willful sin and unintentional sin. Aaron's sons had committed the latter, which is why God didn't strike them down. There is also a difference between not treating God as holy in his servants and accidentally doing something that one shouldn't have. Nadab and Abihu had committed the former, and God killed them. Aaron's sons had committed the latter, and God spared them. God is not a God who is unmerciful. He will provide mercy and grace if we have the heart that is willing to seek it. This concludes our look at the second section of Leviticus concerning the priesthood. The Lord willing, in the next episode, we'll get into section 3, which largely deals with uncleanness and its removal. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 to 12, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.